I think we have 7 or 8 stages. I think there's 110 or 120 artists this year. And we've got really big headliners like L.S.D, The Spits, Sextile. I've always been an artist first. That's why Acid Tongue is so unique, you know, and I'm really intense about how I write songs. To me, doing the festival is less of a business. We have to treat it like a business, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's a real art form to like curate such a diverse roster of bands. The song bullies that melody came to me in a dream. It might be easy to try and like copy a style, but like the ones that really hit hard are just doing them.
He's part of a band from Seattle, Washington with a unique rock and roll sound. They've started their own record label, Freakout Records, and they've toured across the US and Europe, and you may know them from their songs Humpty Dumpty or If Lovin' You Was Easier. Please welcome Guy Keltner from Acid Tongue to the podcast. How are you doing today?
How's it going? All right, cool. I'm good, man. Tired.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, tired. We were talking about it a little bit just before we got started, but you are days away from, starting this year's Freakout Festival, which you run each year. How many times has this festival happened? What year is this? Like, get us into that.
This is the 11th year.
11th
So
year.
11th year, it's really grown. It's let's see, I think we have 7 or 8 stages in a neighborhood in Seattle called Ballard. And what we do is we curate underground psychedelic, punk, rock and roll, and even a little bit of hip hop, and create this really cool environment. But it's not like any other festival because what we're doing is elevating some of these foreign bands that we bring in from Mexico, Europe, elsewhere, and putting them alongside the great local bands of Seattle. Our favorite bands from New York and LA are coming out. And then we've got really big headliners like L.S.D, The Spits, Sextile. And it really creates this cool fucking event. It's like a miniature South by Southwest or Treefort, you know? There's 120 artists now. I think there's 110 or 120 artists this year.
That's crazy. It's super awesome that you're getting this like mix of cultures, mix of countries all to like one area there. I've talked to I've had a couple art bands who are doing this. Sextile I talked to on here, and then I also talked to Tuesday Violence we were having to the festival this year. So yeah,
right on.
and they were both like super excited to be booked for it, like looking forward to it. And so yeah, it seems like it's gonna be like an awesome time. And rather than like, a couple of festivals get, whether it's the desert or wherever, just like this big area, they set up a bunch of stages, things like that. You take sort of a somewhat different approach where you're getting like just local venues all around the area as like the places where people are performing. What goes into planning that, or like how is that different from like constructing stages?
It's cool because for about half the venues we use, they're already have the infrastructure. So these are really cool venues in this neighborhood called, Ballard. And the other places we use are non-traditional. So there's one of our main stages is at the Salmon Bay Eagles Club, which is like one of those fraternal order of the Eagles, these things. It's like Freemasons or one of those things, the Elks Club. So we take over their space, and they have a really big like banquet hall upstairs that they use for meetings. We turn that into the main stage. And then downstairs they have a bar with like a stage that's like more like a honky tonk type vibe. And we also use a cafe called Cafe Umbria. We even do a clothing store called CC Filson and have acoustic shows there. So we really invade these spaces and make them our own during the event. It's super, super unique for what it is.
Yeah. I'll have to see if I can get up there one year to come, because it seems like I don't know if this is how it works out, but I pictured this like small town where like everyone's going from like venue to venue and seeing all these different artists. So it seems like a really cool like hub of like music and things like that.
Yeah, and actually the best part is the after parties. Because that's when you get all these people together and they're partying and having a great time. And we'll stay up till 6 or 7 in the morning just talking, and meeting new people and everything. It's really, really beautiful.
Awesome. So I have to say, I mean, I see how excited you get about talking about these things. In these 10 years that you've done it, soon to be 11, do you have like a favorite moment from a Freakout Festival, whether it's like an actual moment, a moment from planning it, one of the after parties? Like, do you have any moments that stick out to you?
Yeah, I last year it was really wild getting these bands from like Mexico and France in a room after, we were at my apartment after the show, and there's just
Mhm.
like 5 different languages being spoken in my apartment while everybody's partying and doing drugs together and shit. And those are the moments I love because I'm seeing friendships getting made, new bands come out of it. We've had couples meet at Freakout. People have moved to Seattle because they've had such a good experience with it. So it's really had an effect on people's psyches, and I love that about it. And that those are the really special moments for me, is bringing people together.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. And now that you've sort of curated this, it seems like, I mean, by all means, you're still busy, but it seems like you have experience doing it for a decade now. How do you
Yeah.
see Freakout Fest sort of growing in the future? Do you want to expand it further, get bigger artists, have more venues, things like that?
Yeah, we're already kind of doing that. We have a second festival in the spring called the Weekender, the Freakout Weekender.
Cool.
And this year we had Viagra Boys headline it and Fiddler. It was awesome. And that one is in a different neighborhood called Belltown. And there's like a historic venue in Seattle called the Crocodile. And they have a facility with 3 different venues inside of it. So unlike the
Oh,
fall
that's
festival
cool.
where you're walking around the neighborhood and going all over the place, this one is just in one building, and you're running up and down the stairs to catch different bands.
That's awesome.
So we're already starting to expand, but I mean, eventually we want to try and do something like this in East Nashville. We've been talking about it and kicking around the idea. We've done events in New York and LA, and we even host a stage at Treefort. This year we'll be at Treefort Festival, like Saturday night at Treefort. We'll be taking over El Cora Shrine and doing like a
Nice.
2-stage back-to-back thing at their event. So this is like really my dream, was to expand it to the point where we're curating culture.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, by all means, you're definitely doing that with all these different nationalities and countries and languages, like you said, coming to one place for this event.
Hey, if you're like me and you're interested in the YouTube or creator space, you should check out The Published Press. The Published Press is a completely free newsletter founded by YouTubers Colin and Samir. They host their own podcast talking to some of YouTube's largest creators. They've edited some of the best content I've seen on YouTube, and now they're sharing their knowledge about the YouTube space with you for free. The Published Press comes out 3 times a week, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, with everything going on with your favorite creators and platforms. And like I said, it's completely free. Just enter your email address to receive the Published Press whenever it comes out, and that's it. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below, sign up to the Published Press, and get all the info you need on the industry.
You have experience, I guess, on the more like administrative business side of music because you first sort of got started in the industry with your label that helps run this Freakout Records.
Right.
And you actually started it like a couple years before releasing your debut album with Acid Tongue.
Yeah.
How do you think it sort of helped you coming in from a business side first and then like going into making music?
I've always been an artist first, so I take what I do seriously. That's why Acid Tongue is so unique, and I'm really intense about how I write songs and all that stuff. So to me, doing the festival is less of a business. We have to treat it like a business, obviously,
Yeah.
but it's a real art form to like curate such a diverse roster of bands. And so I always like to apply my creative side to everything. You know what I mean? And I would say if we were really smart business people, we would have probably done a much larger type of fest with more mainstream acts, but we chose kind of a tougher road to keep things that we care about. So what I
Yeah.
like about where I'm at in life right now is that I've chosen these very unique things to do that are mine, and I put my thumbprint on the music industry out here.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. And I mean, I think that's a big part of it, like staying true and authentic to like, hey, this is the kind of music that I like, the kind of music that I got into. I'm not doing this to
Yeah,
bring the biggest crowds or like have people like paying the most for tickets. Like it's just this is the music
exactly.
I like. I want to vibe with people who like the same stuff.
And it's finally
And
catching on because
yeah,
in the beginning, it was really small, kind of scattered crowds. It took a few years to build up to what it is now, but now the word is out that this is a discovery fest. So people will buy tickets before they even know the lineup, and they come just to see things they've never heard of. And that's really us getting the job done. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. They're coming for that environment. They're coming for the festival, not to see an artist or two that they like.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you started Acid Tongues or this project with you and I mean the main other collaborator Ian, how did you come up with the name Acid Tongue? Where does that come from?
It's a idiom for having a blunt tongue, you know, like being a blunt speaker. And I feel like my lyricism really embodies that, you know. I'm singing these very honest, personal songs, and having an acid tongue is to be very forthright with people, straightforward, you know, and I don't pussyfoot around my lyrics and that sort of thing. So, you know, I'm writing about these really heavy concepts of love and death, you know, aging, all sorts of shit like that. And I'm not going for pop music necessarily. I'm writing poppy songs, but I'm singing things that are much darker in there, you know, if you read between the lines.
Yeah. And I mean, I have songs like that I like. I've seen it sort of become a more common thing where it is this upbeat like rock or pop song, and then the lyrics are actually talking about something very like vulnerable and honest. And I think that's awesome because you get both crowds. You get the people who are there like to listen to something happy and upbeat, and you get the people who are like relating to you as an artist, as a person, and want like are just glad that someone else has the same experiences.
Exactly.
And so I guess like now shifting a bit back more towards Freakout Fest, that first year that you're like, hey, let's do this, let's put on a festival, let's do it around the Seattle area. What was that like? What went into it? And just anything you can tell us about that first year.
The first year was kind of a fluke. I still had a desk job back then, you know, I wasn't full-time music like I am now. And me and my most of the guys I started it with aren't involved anymore because we were all amateurs, you know. The thing's grown to a point where we need professionals working for the organization. But that first year, we were really coming up with the idea of smoking blunts around the dinner table together and saying, what if we threw this big ass party and invited these bands that we'd met on the road to come play? And originally we did the festival in December. So what I remember about the first year was how cold it was. It was like 8 degrees Fahrenheit outside the whole time. Jeez. And we did it in a different neighborhood back then called Capitol Hill. And so there was kind of some long walks to get from stage to stage. We did a metal bar, a gay bar, and a dance studio were the stages the first year. And one of my favorite memories from that was we weren't very good at the production side back then. So sets were running really long and we didn't have enough time for changeovers. So their manager was dressed like Santa Claus and was hammered. And he started threatening to fight our staff and like fist fight him if they didn't let his band go longer. And the venue was like, no, we got to close up soon. So we can't, you know, go past this time. And so we had a drunk Santa Claus threatening to slug my friends, you know, and it was fucking great.
Yeah, those are the kind of memories that'll definitely stick with you for a while. With Acid Tongue, you and Ian are sort of the main core group, but you bring in different people for sessions or live shows. How does that flexibility or like almost like a revolving lineup of musicians affect your creative process or like how you go about show to show?
I really like it personally, you know. It's not like we don't want full-time members in the band, but you know, I've got so many things going on and there's these tours can be really grueling, you know, so people burn out. And what's nice about having a fairly rotating lineup is that, you know, people are coming in fresh and able to bring their own piece of themselves into the project. So whatever lineup you're seeing is very unique and it makes playing the songs really fun. It never gets old, you know, so you don't typically see the same show twice. And there's a lot of artists that do stuff like that. The OCs have changed lineups a lot. You know, Ty Seagal's always playing with different people. So a lot of people in the industry do this kind of thing. And for us, it's been really fun because we've connected with a lot of different artists over the years from different cities and countries and stuff that have played in the band. You know, I have European members, Mexican members, like people from all over the world that played in Acid Tongue.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think, I mean, like you said, you're not going to get the same show twice, which I think is great because all these fans, you know, regardless of the band or artist, there are people who go to like multiple shows on a tour. And I think it's super cool, like you mentioned, that they're not seeing the same set list, the same thing twice, just in a different city. It's really its own unique show, each performance.
Are you a music artist trying to find a way to get your music on as many streaming platforms as possible? Then check out DistroKid. DistroKid is a super user-friendly and super easy-to-use service that will make your music available in stores like Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, Amazon Music, YouTube, Snapchat, everything. Everything you could imagine, it's available. People will even be able to add your songs into their Instagram stories. DistroKid helps you with the distribution, monetization, and promotion of all of your music. Use the link in the description of this video for 7% off any DistroKid package you want. Pick from musician packages designed to help artists get their own music out there, or even get a label package where you can manage up to 100 artists from one profile. So that's more for like managers, labels, and you can also get the musician package that I mentioned earlier, which is more for artists, producers, things like that. It's super easy, and you can get 7% off any package right now with the link in the description of this video. So once again, if you're looking for a way to get your music on as many streaming platforms as possible, I'm talking any platform you can think of, get DistroKid and get 7% off right now with the link in the description. Back to the program.
Now, coming up with songs for Acid Tongue, you talked about your lyricism earlier. How do you go about coming up with a song, and do you usually start with the lyrics?
You know, it's weird. Sometimes I start with the lyrics and sometimes I start with the melodies, and I like to write different ways. Sometimes like I'll even have a melody or words hit me in a dream. So I've definitely woken up and gone and grabbed my guitar and put something down. Yeah.
And so what is that like for you? Do you always try to get up, or have there been times where like you're like, oh, I'll do it in the morning, and inevitably by the time morning comes you've forgotten it and you're like, dang, I should have just gotten up and done it?
That's why I wake up and do it. You know what I mean? I don't go back to sleep, you know. I have to strike while the iron is hot. That's right.
So how often do those middle of the night ideas usually lead to like turning into something, whether it's a song or anything else? Like, have you found pretty good luck with things like that, or do a lot of them sort of sit on the shelves for a while?
No, you know, they get put on records. That record we put out, Bullies, the song Bullies, that melody came to me in a dream.
Really? And that's awesome.
Yeah. So, you know, they end up on the albums. I don't like to throw a song out, you know, but I do like to work on them for a while and get them tight, you know. The way they sound on the record is so much different than the way I'm writing on this little classical guitar, you know. And I learned how to start demoing on my computer during COVID, so I got really into like arrangements and layering, you know.
Yeah, awesome. And so how long does it usually take for you to like come up with an album from like, you know, middle of the night idea to like releasing it on a record?
Anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. It's hard, you know. It's more of a money thing, to be honest. Like I have loads of songs, but coming up with putting it together a record is just costly, no matter how you cut it, you know. And we're not skimping, you know. I don't have the ability to mix it myself or master it myself, so I'm really having to hire people to do things like that. So that just prolongs the process at times. And since we're not like a money-making band that much yet, it can take time and patience, you know. We really have to put up the cost of a record ourselves. So if anything, it's more of just a cost thing that gets in the way.
Yeah, definitely. And so when, you know, you try not to, but I feel like every artist sort of has, whether they admit it or not, like preconceived notions of whether a song is gonna do well when they release it or not. Do you have that sort of idea of like a song that you think was going to do really well and then didn't, or a song that, you know, you sort of put out just like as a throwaway and it performed really well?
I never thought Humpty Dumpty would be the tune.
Really?
If that's what you're asking. Yeah, like I wrote the original riff for that when I was about 16 or 17 years old, and just had it for years. And I threw it down one day at a rehearsal, and it became what it is now. You know, we tweaked it, made it a bigger song. But it's such a simple tune, and it's really been the one that's resonated with people. So that was a really big surprise for me. You know, I wouldn't have thought this specific song would be like the tune people love of ours. You know?
It's crazy that like, I mean, it seems to happen all over when an artist or a band is like, hey, we didn't really expect this song, and then it blows up to be like their most popular song, or like the song that all the venues want them to play during concerts. So it's really interesting that you held on to that for so long and eventually turned it into like a released song.
It was like striking lightning, you know?
Yeah. And so when you started like performing as a musician, what was your first time performing live? Like, were you nervous at all, or more just excited to like get out there and play for a crowd?
I was a kid. I've been performing since I was a kid, you know. I was probably about 13 or 14 playing for like the teen center, that sort of thing. You
Yeah.
know, and yeah, I was super nervous. It took me a long time to get comfortable with my singing voice. I never saw myself as a singer in the beginning. You know, I would play in bands as the guitar player, and eventually I learned how to use my voice, you know, to my best ability. But that took years of practice. You know, I was very shy about it in the beginning. But as I got into my 20s, I really got comfortable in my skin. And eventually, when I started Acid Tongue, I was like, this is who I am.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just have you stuck to sort of like garage rock or psychedelic rock since the beginning, or is that something you've found more recently?
I've always been into rock and roll. I love rock and roll and soul so much. And you can hear that in all the music we put out. You know, I'm just such a fanatic for soul. So even though it's a rock band, I'm really writing these soulful melodies and lyrics and then making them into these grungy little rock songs. And to
Yeah.
me, that's really cool because like I don't know that a lot of artists are doing that right now, but that's my formula.
Yeah, and even if our other artists are doing it, like you, just from the certain artists or bands that you're taking influence from, or like the way you go about writing it, that inevitably leads to like a unique style or a unique sound that you're getting.
Yeah.
And so even if like the genres are the same, artists are the same, the way you think about it is different. And so all in all, you're not going to have like the exact same sound as someone else unless you're just copying their sound.
That's
And
right.
you know, a lot of these like smaller garage rock, grunge, things like that aren't as highlighted or as like mainstream as other genres, other bands. I mean, Freakout Festival seems to be a great way to do it, but what are some ways you think that this genre or like bands in this genre can get more attention and really just get more ears to their music?
You know, I always want to say just be true to yourself. And I think when people are trying to latch onto a fad, just like you said, it doesn't come off as genuine. And the music that really hits me is so personal and it's so unique to that person and the way they write, you know? So I don't really find a lot to love about like a scene necessarily. I create a scene of people who I feel like are worthy of praise. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
So, you know, for other bands, it might be easy to try and like copy a style, but like the ones that really hit hard are just doing them, you know?
yeah, and with Freakout Festival, I mean, over the years, I'm sure you've met hundreds, maybe thousands of musicians and bands and things like that. How, like, do you have relationships with all these bands playing the festival, or do you sort of invite them to come and meet them through the festival?
It's a mix of both, you know. I'm just a fan, like with Sextile, for example.
Mhm.
Other times it's like through a relationship. Like my wife is friends with Tuesday Violence, and when we were on tour in Brussels, we stayed with them. And
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
we were talking about Freakout, and I was like, I will put you on the lineup, and that's how that all came about. You know, I was a man of my word in that case.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
and
but I love that about it because it's a mix, and I'm always going out like trying to make new friends with everybody when I'm doing these things.
yeah, yeah, that's great. And so just, I guess, like listen, like in your daily routine, just like listening to music, whether it's out and about or just wherever you're hanging out, what are your sort of top three like favorite bands and artists that you just love listening to?
Los Psychos, the Stooges, and the Sonics.
Nice. And
Yeah.
have like, are all those like long time fandoms, or have you found out about any of those more recently?
The Stooges I've loved since high school, and The sonic's same, but Los Psychos I discovered when I was traveling to Mexico in the last 10 years. And I was really fortunate last year to be invited to back Poppy Psychos, the frontman from that band. We played the tunes of Los Psychos with him and toured the States and Mexico together.
That's
So that
awesome.
was a really big moment for me because I'm a huge fan of their music, and I was suddenly on stage performing it, live.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess like maybe it is one of those three bands, but do you have any band or artist that you would like want Acid Tongue to collaborate with and like make a song with?
Jonathan Richman from the Modern Lovers.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
think
what
that
do you think that
I
would
take
look
so
like?
much
Like,
away from I take so much away from Jonathan Richman. Really, like the way he sings, the way he like approaches music. It's not the same genre per se, but it's the attitude of it that I love.
yeah. And what do you think that would look like if like the two of you came together?
Oh, dude, it'd probably have to be acoustic, and I'm sure it would just be the two some fucking raw ass lyrics together. It'd be really nice. I feel like we could make either some really lovely stuff or some really grungy music together,
Or both?
or both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I mean, if someone is trying to be like, okay, never heard of Acid Tongue, and someone's trying to explain it to them, how would you summarize like your sound? Or like if you had to give someone a song to listen to, like what do you think best describes Acid Tongue?
Ooh, it's hard. The sound kind of changes from record to record, The
Yeah.
first one, Babies, was more of a psych record almost, and garage. The second album was kind of glam. And the third record we put out was like more of a compilation with all the features on it, with Death Valley Girls and Naked Giants and stuff. So I'm just writing whatever I feel like, but the individual songs seem to change genre every, few skips of a beat.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's great because inevitably it's going to at some point get hard for any artist or band to stick to like one genre or one specific type of genre. Like even if you're a rock artist, you already have all these different sounds you could try from like, soft rock, hard rock, glam, like you were saying. Whereas like, and so I think every band inevitably finds themselves like making something that's out of the box of their typical sound, but is still authentic to them.
Yeah. The only constant in this band is my voice, you know. That's the biggest
Yeah.
thing. It's such a unique way of singing. And so I feel like that's what kind of ties the thing together. But,
Mm-hmm.
we don't use the same guitars twice. We don't use the same amps twice. We're messing around with whatever's in the room. And I get really inspired by that. I get into a studio and I just want to like play around with everything and see what feels good.
Yeah, and I feel like that's really cool because maybe like an idea that you had that maybe didn't sound great in one location, all of a sudden, like from a different amp or a different instrument, sounds better in this other location, and now you can really expand on it and make a song out of it.
Exactly.
And so, like you were talking about with your voice, whether it is your voice or the instrumentation, anything else about the song, do you have an Acid Tongue song that's like your favorite or that you love coming back to?
Ooh, that's hard. They're like my children, I
Yeah,
hate to pick one, you know what I mean? But
yeah,
on our newest record, the opening track of the record that's going to come out next year is called Desperado. And I'm so stoked to put this thing out. Like it's just such a fucking rad song and it's so funky the way it sounds and everything. So like I'm really into what we just did. It's typically how I feel. It's like whatever the latest project I did, I'm just so psyched about.
yeah, yeah. That's awesome. And now, like speaking of your latest project, you have like a sort of, how would you describe it? Like a two-track, a single, whatever it would be. You have L.S.D and Consumerism. What can you tell us about like this two-song pairing and like the two tracks on there?
I'm really stoked about it because this is one where I really got down at home and demoed everything out very meticulously before even going into the studio. So
Mm-hmm.
I love it because I was making these really raw demos that sounded so fucking awesome. And we even kept some of the pieces of the demo in the record, but it sounds like we spent like 20 grand on the thing and we didn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
Because
do you think that like better sound is just from taking the time to sit with it and demo it out, or just the songs themselves? Like, where do you think that comes from?
yeah, I think the songs were really in a moment in my life where I'm just feeling great and like just on a roll with my creativity. So this album is really awesome because it's very cohesive, which a lot of our records are kind of disjointed creatures, and there's so much going on. But the new record definitely has a sound that I'm very proud of.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, I mean, we talked about Freakout Fest happening in a couple days. You tease this upcoming record you have next year. What are you most excited about for coming up, for whether it's Acid Tongue or Freakout in general?
Oh, I'm so excited that Acid Tongue is going to play with the Gories at Freakout. We're on the same stage together. That's going to be a fucking life goal achieved as well. Every year it's a different life goal achieved,
Yeah.
but this one is going to be really fun. I'm also excited to see the Spits 2 nights in a row because we got them playing twice.
That's awesome.
That'll be a lot of fun.
It's great that you're also coming at this with the perspective of a fan as well. You're not just putting on this festival and being like, great, okay, what were the numbers, things like that. You like these bands, you want to be in attendance, and so I think that also brings a whole new level of authenticity to it.
These are all my favorite bands. This is what I listen to. That's what's so fun about it.
Yeah. And so now here, just to try to wrap things up, we'll see how well it goes. But I try this new-ish segment that I've had. It's been a while since I did it, but it's called Know Your Stuff, where I'm just gonna have a couple bits and pieces of Acid Tongue songs played, and you're gonna try to let me know if you can know the song.
Cool. Whatever happened?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And
wow.
Yeah. So that's the first one. Do you have anything you want to say about that song?
Oh, dude, we wrote that in a rehearsal space. It just kind of came together. It was so fun to pull that song together. I haven't listened to that in years.
I saw just that emotion come over your face when I started playing it. It seemed like I visibly took you back to that studio and making it.
It used to be in our set all the time too. We used to play that in the set all the time. I don't know what happened to that song, but maybe I should bring it back at some point.
Yeah. And so I got two more quick ones right here. Here's the next one.
Ooh, Follow the Witch.
Yeah.
That originally was kind of a droney song that sounded almost like a Black Angels thing. And we changed it into that stonesy, funky, bluesy rock and roll sound after a bit. We were like, this isn't working. So I started playing. I love that fucking riff.
I mean, it's probably one of my favorite things I've heard from the band, and partly for that reason, just that low bass riff that you have going on. And it's really cool that you can take something that didn't work out at first, and rather than scrap or anything like that, turn it into something that you really like.
Yeah, and actually the ooh-oohs on that song, we had this couple we knew, friends of ours came to meet us at the end of the studio day to take us to dinner, and we yanked them into the studio with us and had them do the ooh-oohs together with us. And so that was really funny that night. They were all drunk.
That's
and
awesome. And so were those ever thought of or meant to be your own vocals or someone else, or did you always have the plan of bringing in an outside person to be the
No, it was just on the fly. It was just off the cuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so the last one I have for you here today, let's see if you can get it as quickly as you got those other two. But
oh, Kaleidoscope.
Yeah,
we did that in New York City. I lived in New York for 3 years, and my friend Matt Gibbs from the band Avolfo had a home studio in the attic of his house in Ditmas Park. So I was taking 2 trains. I'd have to go one train, because I lived in Brooklyn as well, but Ditmas Park is in the south end of it. So I would have to take one train into Manhattan and then another train down to the south part of Brooklyn and walk to his house every day for a while. And so we did that EP in a house and then had a friend mix it.
That's awesome. And
we did it all through an analog board too. It just has that analog sound.
So is that where the name, so the EP, The Night We Broke Our Lease, is that where the name comes from? Was there some lease trouble from using it basically as a music studio?
I broke up with a girlfriend and we broke our lease right after I recorded that. So that's what gave the name to the song.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, it's great hearing these background, stories to it and things that just add a whole nother layer to different projects.
Right on, dude.
Yeah. Well, it definitely seems like you know your stuff. You got those almost immediately each time. So thank you so much for coming on. It's been great. And I mean, I can't wait to see these like videos coming out of Freakout Fest. I wish I could go there in person.
Yeah.
Anything you want to like shout out or promote for people listening, feel free to promote it now.
You said enough about Freakout Fest, and we talked about my new record. I think those are the biggest things right now. So we're in good shape, my friend. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. I'll leave a link to some of that down below. And make sure, if this is out before Freakout Fest, make sure you get your tickets to go see Freakout Fest. If it's out after, then you missed out, and go see it next year.
Right on, dude.